All my life, I've been driven by a challenge. It was given to me or was often repeated to me by my late aunt, who said that me utakataka wako kaua, me unakana me naweni nungupin, which translates into something like, I should work hard so that I can support myself with my writing. My story began in my small island, in my small village on the island of Ngau, where I was raised after I was taken from Suva as a child by my late aunt and uncle under an adoption system that is widely practiced in the Pacific. In the village, I was taught to believe in the omnipresent God, to relate to my relatives, my responsibilities, to swim, to garden, to forage in the forest and in the sea for food, and to cook. By the time I left the village in pursuit of higher education in the late 1970s, I was reasonably well grounded in who I am, my people's reliance on the ocean, and of course, my role later in life. Although my aunt would have wanted me to have a life outside of the village, I actually wanted to be educated, to be a better villager. My first work was at the Queen Victoria School on the northeast coast of Tailevu province. At the Queen Victoria School, I was introduced to the fishers of Ngoma Island, a fishing community offshore. Ngoma fishers were providing for the school as well as us that were part of the community, our fish needs. Were reliant on the sea, and yet were not regarded commercial fishers because they are villages, and villages are supposed to be unreliable producers, maybe not very strong to withstand the rigors of commercial fishing, and often did not access the kind of support that often were given to commercial operators. I made the fishes of Ngoma a subject of my postgraduate studies. Years later, I was fortunate enough to be allowed to do a PhD research, and I added to that earlier study. This time the subject was rural development projects, often noble in their design and reasons, but their failure litter the rural development landscape. I joined the University of the South Pacific in 1990 and at once made a member of a non-government organization based at the university called SPECI. And our target was to advocate for good environment management amongst Pacific Islanders that go through the university. It was at SPECI that I first got to work with communities and with government. And for me, it was enjoyable. I was beginning to realize some of the things that I had wanted to do. One of the things that I did not mention earlier was that from the young age, while in the rural village, I was actually asking God to bless my relations for the love that was unconditional that they showed me in raising me to live in my island world. So, working with or doing the work that non-government organizations do was for me like a really refreshing moment. In 1992, I attended a short training offered by the International Ocean Institute, again a non-government organization, but this is international because it's registered in Malta, and they were trying to advocate for the promotion and endorsement of what had come out in 1982 the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. For those that don't know, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea is like the constitution for the ocean. It outlines the rights and the responsibilities of states over their maritime areas. It also proposes the sustainable use of the marine environment and of the resources. In 1992 as well, the world gathered in Rio for arguably the biggest conference in the world at the time. Presidents, prime ministers, ministers of states, they all gathered there. And out of that meeting came a number of agreements. The one I'd like to make you remember for this presentation are the two conventions, one on climate change and one on biodiversity conservation, and the third, Agenda 21, because I'll come back to those. That meeting in Rio, I was not there, I was too insignificant. It sort of, however, propelled my area of research to the global level. All of a sudden, I was getting told to go, invited to get to meetings all over the place. I learned two things from the conferences that I went to. One is this one, that we are failing in our attempts to manage the fisheries of the ocean. So I was actually fortunate in a sense, because I was in St. John's, Newfoundland in 1998. We were gathering there to celebrate the 500-year anniversary of the arrival into Canada of Europeans. In 1998, that's 6 years after the collapse of the cod fishery of the Northwest Pacific, 6 years after the declaration of the moratorium that is still there today, banning all kinds of fishing for this major stock. Like the Titanic, the unsinkable, and then it sank on its very first passage across the Atlantic, the cod fishery of that part of Canada was regarded too big. They could not imagine that it would disappear in less than 500 years. So I often wonder, why aren't countries around the world serious about addressing the sustainability of fisheries? I'm also quite well, I want to be hopeful, but a bit troubled that we have not implemented Agenda 21, which was supposed to be the agenda for sustainable development in the 21st century. We have not done that. So that's the outcome for me from these global meetings. I'm beginning to feel like maybe for some of them, for some of the meetings, what they want to do is produce the reports. From where I'm coming from, reports are not good enough. So, around about 2000, a group of us at the University of the South Pacific, together with our partners, decided we're going to try a different approach to addressing this whole issue of articulating sustainable development. We decided, amongst or against a lot of criticism, to focus our attention in one place, an island, hopefully big enough so that it can be representative of islands throughout the Pacific. Not too big like Veitiyaki. Veitiyaki is too big. It's only for government, maybe. For us, individuals, researchers, maybe an island this size would be more appropriate. And we decided the reason why we wanted to do this was that it is really difficult to show people what has worked. And so if we can concentrate our attention in having our intervention in one place, the hope is that it would work out well. So with the little resources that we secured, and of course we all have full-time jobs elsewhere, we started the engagement process. But to start, this is the unique and natural capital that is worth looking after. Mountain forests that have not been logged, wonderful biodiversity not seen anywhere else outside of these forests, nice clean rivers that rush towards the coastal habitats teemed with rich and endemic biodiversity. This, don't you think, is worth looking after? And then endemic birds like the Fiji petrel. So from about 2000, over 16 years ago, and we're still at it, we're doing community-based meetings, training, because let's face it, a lot of the people that are back in the villages really cannot come out of the villages. It is up to us to reach out to them and then hopefully change them or change the way they do things. We also document the management activities undertaken by communities. In this case, they have the protected areas. Every single one of the 16 villages already has a protected area. And these are the kinds of marine management results. Okay? We've mobilized people to go out there and plant mangroves in the hope that the mangroves would enhance the fishery recovery as well as protect the coastline. A coastline that is eroded because the seawall no longer works has to be repaired, because that's important for the people to continue with their lives. And of course, we're trying to find sources of income other than the sale of fish, because actually we believe that the fish that are there maybe should be kept first as a first preference for local consumption. You, I think, would now believe that things are happening. Unfortunately, the villages still can't make the connections between the variety of activities, the organization that sustainable development requires. And that's a challenge that we have to face. So again, and in very an iterative way, we learn from our mistakes and our difficulties and try and forge into the future. We've now decided to work on a demonstration center to put all of our intervention in one spot so that people can come, have a look, and then maybe decide which one is appropriate for them, which one they want to take, and so on. And you can see people are now willingly participating because they believe in what is being done. Government is even coming to the party, providing some assistance so that we can reach out to the people at large. This is a two-year-old sandalwood plantation, part of the new kind of crops that we hope to promote around the island. We also have, thanks to the Embassy of Japan, they've given us some equipment because there's a lot of pine plantation on the island. This sawmill will allow us to influence the kind of logging that is done on the island. And we actually want to go back to wooden houses because they stand up to climate change a lot better. So I've seen you what I have done with what I have learned. And I'm saying that I'm still engaging, I'm still there whenever the work at the university allows me. But I look forward to retiring and maybe to doing that full time, because I believe that's the only way we can articulate sustainable development. I'd like to challenge you all, wherever you are. Sustainable development is a big commitment. It will only happen, however, if individuals like you and I are united in the pursuit of a world where we have continuous supply of of resources, of services that we get from the environment, where people have dignified lives, where there's no argument over resources because everyone is contented. We need individual action. You all have skills, you all have resources. Just imagine the impact on a village community if you participate in any of the activities that are undertaken in those communities. For sustainable development, we need to make these mini governments that operate in all rural communities around the world to share and work towards the common vision to achieve sustainable development, because I think it's the only right option that we have. Without sustainable development, we will always be looking out for eventualities like the cod fishery in Newfoundland. So my take-home message is basically very simple. It's that we all have to work together. Sustainable development will not happen if half of our population are pursuing it and the other half are not involved. For sustainable development to take place, we need to work as the world community. In fact, that is the only way we can support our population going to the future. And this is what I believe is the calling for us. Those of us who are here now with the power to influence the lives of our loved ones years from now. As our very own President of the UN General Assembly said recently, we have to do it right, because this is the only planet that we can live in. I thank you.